So I hope you have all had an amazing experience learning, being entertained. I know some of the panels I went to were quite entertaining and being inspired. I know I have certainly spent the day being inspired by the wonderful women that we had with us today. But I think really you're in for another inspirational session here at the Women in Leadership Summit. We are going to give three very special awards, and I wanted to tell you a little bit about the awards before we start because there was some really specific criteria we looked at when we looked at these three awards. First, we wanted women who were successful in their careers, and we wanted women who were demonstrating that success in different ways at different times in their careers, and that was really important in that criteria. But the awards committee that looked at many, many nominees on these awards also wanted something that I think is really special, and it's something that we have been talking about all day, and it is a meaningful way that somebody brings somebody else along, and in this case, it's women that these three women are bringing along, and they are doing it in really, really powerful ways that you will see. And I think part of the message of these awards, because we're also going to give three awards to women at different phases in their career. And part of the message is that this isn't something that you have to wait for a long time to do. It's something that you can start doing right away. And our three awardees have definitely done that, whether they've been in their careers for a long time, a medium amount of time, or a little time. They've started bringing women along with them and helping inspire them and mentor them from the very beginning of their careers. So I just wanted to tell you that this was something that we thought was really important. These are the first awards that Darden has given as part of this Women at Darden initiative. And so we wanted it to be special. And I think you will agree that these three awardees are super special. So to present our first award, I want to turn the podium over to Yael Grushka-Kane. And you have heard from Yael earlier on the panel in sustainability, but Yael is the Senior Associate Dean for Professional Degree Programs. She has a very long title. I'm not going to read it all. And she's also the Steislinger Foundation Chair in Business Administration. What you should know is that she has been a tireless supporter of Women at Darden from the very beginning when this initiative started many years ago. And Yael has been one of the true architects of taking this forward. So Yael, over to you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here at the end of this long and amazing day. And I know that we'll have time later to thank Carolyn for everything that she's done here today. But now I have the honor to present an award that is very special to a very special individual. I was lucky enough to get married twice to the same man, wearing the same wedding dress. And that's good value for money. I say this because it brings me great joy 18 years later to tell everybody that I wore the dress twice. And then my cousin borrowed it and wore it again. But I am lucky because this is not the first but the second time that I get to announce this award. Natalia was recognized at graduation. We thought this was important not only to acknowledge the award here, but given that the nature of the award is for a graduating student, it was really celebrating stuff that she did during her time at Darden and really our belief of what she will likely continue to do beyond her time at Darden. And so we announced it, and I read out the citation that I'm about to read out to you all here at graduation, and was able to see her family's face react to that news in the moment, which was special. And again, I was humbled and honored. I will read out the citation, and I'll just say that Natalia has inspired many of us in many different ways for her astute observations, her really constant perseverance for dedicated causes that are important to her. And I've learned to ask myself in my day-to-day job, months after she's graduated, what would Natalia say? What would Natalia do? What would she comment on whatever decision I'm about to make? And so thank you for that. Okay, so it is with great honor that I would like to announce the first award of the evening, which is the Women's Leadership Summit Trailblazer Award, awarded to Natalia Alvarez Diaz from the class of 2022. Natalia is getting this award for her leadership and numerous contributions to advancing women and gender equity at Darden inside and outside the classroom. Through her work with faculty, admissions, women at Darden, the MBA Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion initiatives, and her presidency of the Graduate Women in Business Club. Natalia is a visionary leader, paying careful attention to the individuals and the community around her, working to make Darden the best school it could be for diverse women and all. This is an understatement of really what she's done to the community, talking honestly and openly to her classmates and to her faculty and to the administration, endlessly, time and time again, with an amazing amount of patience to say, these are important issues. We need to do better. We need to pay attention. So I hope you all pay careful attention as Natalia shares with us her thoughts. Congratulations. Give your hand. I'm going to pause for photo shoot. Yes.
Right. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Yael. I am so humbled by this recognition and thrilled to be here with everybody. And I feel incredibly fortunate to be receiving this award from somebody who has been an incredible, incredible professor, a generous mentor, a champion, and a friend. So thank you so much, Yael. I also want to take a moment to thank Betsy and to thank Carolyn, as well as the entire team that put together the summit. Event planning is really difficult, and it's especially difficult in a time like this. And I know you all worked tirelessly to make this a success, so thank you. I am going to share a little bit about myself with you all, but before I do that, I want to give thanks to a couple of people without whom I wouldn't be here, some of whom I think are tuning into the live stream, so hi, Mom and Dad. So yeah, first and foremost, I want to thank my parents. I want to thank my brother, Esteban, and my partner, Chris, and the incredible friends who have been with me along this whole journey. I also want to thank the Darden faculty and administrators and staff. These people fielded my every call, my every text, all of my emails, and they all gave me this incredible amount of room to be an authentic leader, and I'm really, really grateful for that. I also especially want to recognize the 11 members of the board of GWIB, including Alex, who's in the back, and I'm going to embarrass her and force her to stand up because she is a big part of this too. Alex and the other 10 members of my board, they are talented, they're generous, they're kind, they're fearless, and they made me a better person and a better leader. And I'm so grateful to each of them. And I share this award with all of them and with all of the women of Darden too. Now I'm excited to tell you all a little bit about my story, about why I chose to attend business school and what I decided to do while I was at Darden. I'm originally from Mexico City, so like Yael said, it was special that my parents could be there for graduation. But I grew up in a bunch of different places. My father worked as a diplomat for the Mexican Foreign Service for over 30 years. And so his career took my mom, my brother, and I to different corners of the world. I was born in Canada, but my family spent time also in New Zealand, in Lebanon, and in Egypt. And like many privileged families around the world, my family relied on the labor of women to support our family. And in our case, we relied specifically on the labor of an indigenous woman. And one of them, her name was Guille. Guille left behind her own 2 children in rural Mexico to come look after my brother and I in Mexico City. And when my dad's job took us to New Zealand, which is halfway across the globe, Guille moved with us. And it was during car rides and before bedtime and on the way to dance class that she would tell me and my brother stories about her life, about the years that she spent working in an LA restaurant, about how cold the Rio Grande feels to swim across, and about how much she missed her children. She actually returned to the US just before my 14th birthday. She once again crossed one of the most dangerous borders in the world, leaving behind her family and mine. But her stories always stayed with me. I started to ask a lot of questions about why women like Guille faced so many obstacles, and I found that none of those answers ever satisfied me. Years later, I moved to the US, and because I knew she was here, I looked for Guille, but I couldn't find her. And so I strengthened my resolve to support people like her. I met with activists from the border. I helped migrants trapped in isolated towns in New England to find jobs. And in 2012, I was actually here in DC. And as I celebrated the passing of the DREAM Act, I thought about her kids and about their futures. And after college, I moved here full time. I worked at a small company where I thought about the most vulnerable people. In fact, Pavani, I hope, is here, a former coworker. And I focused my professional career on helping those who were most vulnerable. But I also got really involved with immigrants' rights organizations here in DC. And later, I started to become more involved in our group's advocacy efforts in particular. So I was talking to local community members and to policymakers and to business people about this country's completely broken immigration system. And in 2019, right as I was starting to consider the next step in my career, I became involved in advocacy efforts that were targeting large international hotel chains. And that's because in the summer of 2019, the then administration announced that they would be conducting large mass-scale raids to deport undocumented immigrants, and that they would be partnering with international hotel chains to house some of those immigrants. And so my group and many groups around the country, we sprang into action, and we actually lobbied these groups. And I played a very, very small part in the fact that we successfully lobbied these hotel chains, and they publicly refused to cooperate with ICE. And as a result of it, the mass raids didn't occur, and we prevented thousands of families from being separated and torn apart. The mass raids didn't happen, but what did happen was that I had a moment where I realized the really deep power of the private sector to impact the kind of social and political issues that I really care about. And so, encouraged by generous mentors at work and by my parents, my brother, my partner, my amazing friends, I decided, okay, I'm going to apply to business school. And I was lucky enough to receive acceptances right as the COVID pandemic was taking hold. It was actually around then that I was able to get in touch with Guille via Facebook and to learn about her life in Florida. She lives there with her 2 kids. And in the midst of a difficult time, that was, a really comforting, a special comfort. And so despite the uncertainty, I decided to enroll at Darden in the fall of 2020. And early on, I became involved in student leadership. I decided to run for my section's gender equity representative because, like the vast majority of business schools, as many of you in this room know, Darden has not reached parity. And this is especially felt in the classroom. And so my role as gender equity representative was to work with the faculty and with the administrators to really advocate on behalf of the women in my section. And I loved this work and I wanted to do more of it. So I got involved with a broader multi-business school effort around DEI. And so I talked to my counterparts in all kinds of different business schools, big, small, urban, rural. And I found out that a lot of the challenges we were having at Darden were shared by other schools. And in some ways that made me feel a little bit better, but in other ways it made me really mad. And so I decided that I was going to run for president of Graduate Women in Business, GWIB, which is the largest student club on campus. And over the course of my second year, and again, with the unwavering support of my 11 board members and of allies, I sought to reinvent the women's experience at Darden. I wanted to make Darden a more welcoming place for all women, but especially for women who deviate from the more traditional business school student background. I worked to make our school a better place for mothers, for veterans, for queer women, for women of color, for people who were like me and for people who could not have been more different. And we planned conferences, we rewrote cases, we engaged prospective students, we built community, we pushed corporate sponsors. And I think we really transformed what it meant to be at Women at Darden and created a path for others to be able to continue to do that reinvention for the better. And in the process, I also got really comfortable with making other people uncomfortable for the sake of progressive and inclusive change. And I'm really grateful to Darden for recognizing my efforts and those of my board and of so many women and allies. I want to speak now to some of the women who are prospective women who are in the room and also to the current students. I see some of you. As you join incredible companies and as you start your own companies, I challenge you to remember that as a future business leader, you have a role to play in making the world a more just and a more equitable place. Businesses that claim to be a great workplace for women, and let me tell you, in recruiting, you're going to hear that so much. They, in fact, cannot be a great workplace for anybody unless they are willing to examine their own entrenched biases and unless they are willing to speak up about the issues that affect women every day, like access to abortion and paid parental leave and institutionalized racism and gun control and climate change and the rights of transgender people. So I challenge you to hold these and any other institutions that you interact with accountable. And I hope that you remember that with this degree comes an incredible amount of privilege. Like so many incredible women in this room have already done, I hope that you open doors for others. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Natalia. And I think an amazing example of what you can do, even at the beginning of your career, before you go back to school, while you're at school. Just amazing. So I want to give this next award. I want to talk a little bit about this next awardee. This is someone who, again, has gone really above and beyond. And yes, this awardee did a lot while they were at Darden. But I think one of the things that often happens is you get out of school, you get into the real world, you get very involved in your career starts really taking off. And are you still doing the things that really is helping others? And that I think is difficult to do, but our next awardee has really demonstrated that. She's demonstrated that not only is it possible, but it's important to do. Angelica Alam is someone who, from a very early age, and she and I had a chance to talk about this, her immigrant parents said to her, "It is your responsibility to give back." And I know a lot of us have had that same kind of message ingrained in us, and I could tell when I was talking to Angelica that that was something she felt really deeply. She's really done that in a big, big way. She's had a very successful career in product management, in finance, in strategy with some very big name companies, Viacom, JP Morgan, Citibank, and now she's at Meta. So think about how difficult that is just to make those kinds of career moves early in your career. But it's really her extracurricular activity, all those things that we do in those other hours of the day, which we're not sure where they come from, that makes her really such a fantastic awardee. So almost 5 years ago, Angelica started something called the Power Her Circle. And the idea of this organization is to work with entry and mid-level women in their careers and do things like build their self-esteem, their confidence, help them with real skills in terms of negotiating, some of the things that you guys have heard about today, but really help them advance their careers. This isn't something that she had to do. Obviously, her plate was very full in terms of the things that she was doing. But she said, this is important. And when she and I talked about it, she talked about the superpowers that she unleashes for women. And I would tell you that this is a woman who has amazing, amazing superpowers. So, Angelica, we would love to give you the Women's Summit Recent Alumni Award. Angelica Alam.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, what you are incredible. And I am such a fan. It is an honor to receive an award with that intro from somebody so extraordinary. Thank you. And what an honor to follow you. You are our pride and joy. You are everything that my brand represents and more. And I am just floored. I needed a minute to transition into me because whoo, that was thank you for representing us so well. Thank you. Um, I just want to start off by saying that this is an incredible honor and privilege, and God has been so good to me. Um, these are rooms, and I still get emotional, even being, I won't say how many years out because I'm forever young, but these are rooms that I dreamed of being in, not just to be in them, but so that everyone that came after me can be in them too. And so I really want to share, won this award with a couple of people. I want you all to think of what I'm about to say more than any accolades that were just named. And so less of me and more of, first and foremost, the most amazing Darden class of all time, the class of 2014, who is here in here in droves. These women are some of my greatest pillars, are directly responsible for helping me mold and sharpen. As iron sharpens iron, so too do these women ensure that you stay sharp. So as any Darden woman would tell you, we are not solely responsible for our success. There are a lot of women around us, in front of us, surrounding us, that are directly responsible for who we are today, and that is the Darden value, that is the Darden brand. We'll talk a lot more about that tomorrow in the keynote, but I then want to move to some women who emulate and embody everything the Power Circle is all about. And that is Elena, Yael, Mary Margaret, the faculty of Darden that taught us what it truly means to be brilliant unapologetically and powerful unapologetically, and yet soft at the same time. Because I cried numerous times in a couple of those offices while I was in school. Um, I want to honor them. I'm still touted as probably one of the people who have had the largest family count at graduation. And I really want to honor my parents, my family, my sisters. I have 4 sisters, by the way, 5, 6. You get it. Um, they were my first love and my first introduction to loving women the way that I do. I really love us, of all colors, gender, relativity, whatever you aspire and really embrace. I really love us. I think we are so powerful. And that's why I started the Power Circle, because our power is extraordinary. And when we put it to use, boy, are we unstoppable, like unstoppable. And so that is what I hope with my organization, who is the next body I hope to honor and share this award with and dedicate this award to. It is their success, it is their truth, it is their power, and it is their energy that feeds and drives me. Yes, I've had a successful Wall Street career. Sure, I'm having a phenomenal career in tech. But I tell you, my greatest pride is watching a woman have an aha moment, is watching a woman overcome better than I could have ever at the point that they're in. And that is what continues to drive me. So I too share this with the Power Circle community. And I share it with them because I want them. And I know a lot of them are on the live. I shared it with the community. And I'm using a very wonderful Instagram live product to stream this. Shameless plug, Meta. To stream this, but I really want to share this with them, and I want to speak truth to power, as was stated earlier, that all of you are extraordinary and all of you deserve the energy that is this room. I was very privileged to be in a room that represents what's here today. It represents opportunity, it represents possibility. And I want everyone here to understand how much of a privilege that is. That is not the norm. And I will not stop until everyone that comes from where I come from, that looks like I look like, and by the way, that's unbiased to culture, that's unbiased to low socioeconomic, high socioeconomic, pain knows no bias. So anyone who's experienced the pain of insecurity, the pain of doubt, the pain of, can I make it? I share the space with you. And that is the space I hope to share with everyone, because it's what I got coming to Darden and having the support system that I have. So thank you for this award. Thank you for the support. And to the women that are watching that I represent, you are all winners. And thank you for giving me the opportunity to accept this award on your behalf. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelica. For our last presentation, for our last award, we have a special presenter. And frankly, she's a woman who we could have given this award to as well. She is certainly deserving of it. Edie Frazier, who's the president of the Women Business Collaborative. It's an alliance of over 70 organizations that represent business women. And they just finished their amazing conference that had 4,000 people, I think, virtually in attendance. And their vision is that we will not rest until there is an equal position, pay, and power for all businesswomen. Sounds like a pretty good goal to me. So I give you Edie Frazier to make our last award.
I think we're awed about our future when we listen to Natalia and Angelica. You give us such hope, and you are all about we and not I, which is what this country must have going forward. So we really salute you. And we think about the reinvention, and it's my privilege to introduce my friend, Lorraine Hariton. Lorraine has been reimagining for her whole life in terms of decade after decade. She went to Stanford and got her MBA at Harvard and then came back to California. And you'll see that she's intersected in a leadership of business, technology, nonprofit organizations, and governance, and has really succeeded and brought other women along the way in everything that she's done. So out in California, she became very quick and proficient at technology before most of us, and got and really built then and worked with the Forum of Entrepreneur and Executive Women out there and Watermark and the groups before so many of the groups were even formed. And I had the pleasure, as we worked for Hillary Clinton in the first campaign, we didn't know each other, but we met in Iowa, and she raised a lot of money on the West Coast, and with Judith Barnett and other friends on the East Coast, we raised a lot of money on the East Coast. And Lorraine, we met there, and we became fast friends from that time forth, as we knew we could impact the political system. We also knew that the private sector would really make things happen and really stand up for women. So then Lorraine came and was appointed to go to State Department when Hillary became Secretary of State. And she represented this country for business. And she not only did it for all business and worked with companies big and small, but she set up several advisory boards for women around the world. And she was our role model, right, Judith, as we all worked with her there. And then she went on to New York and take her technology science background and reinvented and went to the New York Academy of Science. And again, she built a STEM program there, and she set up to get more and more women and set up several organizations and got all the big corporations to sign up and talk about what we could do to really build the best and the smartest of women. And then she was asked to go for the CEO of Catalyst. And I think, as many of us know, Catalyst is having its 60th year and was so much in the forefront, particularly with the Fortune 1000 companies, to really drive change. And Lorraine was brought in to be a transformational leader because Catalyst needed infusion of her energy, her smarts, her guide for technology. And they knew that Lorraine could champion, be an advocate, and elevate with others. And we share that spirit of just total collaboration and building. But today, Catalyst is such a strong organization. And together, we work with many organizations because of Lorraine's insight, her joy in giving back to others, and our friends that are here that are Lorraine's friends. We will never stop, as we say, no matter how old we get, in terms of our legacy is that legacy. And we're working now so hard to see more women CEOs in the C-suite and boards of directors and more capital. And the only way we'll do that is not compete, but collaborate. So to see the younger generation coming up with that spirit, that is Lorraine Harrington, and we share those values. And what a joy it is to call you friend.
Well, I am just blown away by this group and by the opportunity to be here today with Natalia and Angelica. I mean, your stories really move me so much, and you know, I'm just so impressed. And Carolyn, and what you've done at Darden to make women's leadership a key element of the program. And it's very admirable, and I can feel the commitment here in what you've put together. I want to talk a little bit about Edie and our friendship, um, because all my life, women have helped me, and then I've helped them together be successful. And, for us who are maybe a little later in our career, the environment was tough going and there weren't that many women around. And we really had to be together. So, Edie mentioned that she met me when I was a technology executive in Silicon Valley and had a passion throughout that time, being one of the few women in technology, to really work with other women. And that's when I got involved in helping Hillary become president, which she didn't quite make, but um, we know that story. But Edie became a friend and a colleague of mine throughout what's now over 15-year period of time, starting in Silicon Valley, where she was doing some work that I introduced her to my network in Silicon Valley. We just talked about this right before we were talking about. She even reminded me that I had an event for her in 2006 when she came out for Hillary, but I introduced her to the whole Silicon Valley network out there for her STEM work. And then when I came to Washington to work for Hillary at the State Department, she embraced me and invited me into her Washington, D.C. network and became a mentor of mine, as did my friend Judith Barnett, who's here, who also mentored me when I came to Washington, D.C. And we formed a women's network of political appointees that supported us in Washington, D.C. Even though I didn't know the political scene, these women helped me feel comfortable and showed me the ropes. And women helping women is something that I've really learned to understand. And then and then after, as she mentioned, I was involved in the STEM pipeline at the New York Academy of Sciences. Edie happened to be running the STEM Connector organization. So there we were again, working together as a team, helping each other out, introducing us to other people, helping us, supporting each other. And then, of course, the Catalyst, I went to Catalyst, and Edie formed the Women's Business Collaborative, and we've helped each other together. So, one of the things I want to say is my friendships, my relationships, the network of women that have supported each other together has really made my career, especially in a time when, that uh, I'll just tell you, when I first worked at IBM in the late 70s and 80s, and I had my first child, um, we had to order business suits out of the catalog for maternity business suits because you had to wear business suits, it buttoned up business suits. So, the environment was not exactly, we think we haven't made progress. We've made a lot of progress compared to what it was. I also said this because I was asked to talk about Queen Elizabeth recently. And I said to her, she, over the 70 years that she was there in that position of power, she represented a woman of power. And she welcomed three women prime ministers into her during her tenure. And there had never been a woman prime minister. So us of a certain age have actually seen this evolve over time. And as we move the baton to the next generation here of women, there's still a lot of work to be done, but we've come a long way, baby. And I so I just sort of want to say that. And as I'm so honored to have this to get this award because it really speaks to a passion that has been part of my life for yeah, and it became increasingly important to me as I had my own life experiences in Silicon Valley and then in the State Department. And as I have more experiences, I've been able to learn from that. And then in this Catalyst job, which has been so impactful, an opportunity to really drive change across, millions and millions of people and companies, it's really been very meaningful. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation now with Mary Margaret and go into a little more depth on that. So thank you, thank you, thank you for this award. I'm so honored.
Can you hear us in the back? Okay, great. Well, thank you for being here and congratulations.
Thank you.
Well, one of the reasons I'm thrilled to be here, among many, is you are a true tri-sector leader. And if I think about this move, sort of a zigzag from private sector to public sector to not-for-profit, I wonder how you thought about those decisions and sort of to some degree the process by which you sort of thought about that. Because I can imagine we have people here that have the desire to move across sectors. We're in DC, we're with the business school. I know I have talked to women out there who've gone to business school to lead not-for-profits. So I think that could really help them understand how you thought about that process and what sort of catapulted you to sort of make the leap across sectors.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I like to say that it was totally planful, but it wasn't necessarily totally planful. And, when we had at Harvard Business School, which I graduated from, at 50 years of women at Harvard Business School, they asked me, they did a little interview and I said, they asked me, what is the most surprising thing with your career? And I said, that, originally I was very planful, but then I sort of went with my passions and that's made all the difference. I mean, it really took me down a path I never would have thought I would be involved in. My original passion and focus was really on the computer industry. And I got involved in that really because I went with my strengths. We say, what are your superpowers? Well, I had dyslexia. I still have dyslexia. And because of that, I had a more narrow gauge of where I was really good. I was very good organizationally, analytically, and that took me into math. So, so when I was a freshman in college at Hamilton College, I had a professor who was my calculus teacher. I was also babysitting for his kids, and he made me a research assistant. And he said, "You should do your winter study on computers." And at the time, they had one teletype terminal into the Air Force Base in Rome, New York. This was in 1973. So, but I fell in love with it. And I said, really, I want to make my career around this. I want to talk about how computers can change the world. So it took me to Stanford. And I never, ever, grew up in New York. I didn't know California, but I applied and I got into Stanford and that changed my life. So then that led me to lead this career in technology. And it took me from large companies to mid-sized companies to doing startups. But along the way, I started to get this involvement, as I talked about, with women's networks, with understanding the issues and the challenges that women had in building their career at the time. And I got involved with this organization that Edith mentioned called the Forum for Women Entrepreneurs and Executives. I ended up first on their taking their classes, then I went on their advisory board, then their board, then I was chairman of their board, and then I got involved with the Stanford Institute for Gender Research. So it became part of who I was. And then after doing my second startup in 2005, I decided I wanted to change. I had done two startups and it hadn't quite worked out the way I wanted to. I will admit that. But during that time, I had started to develop this interest and passion, and I actually got involved in this organization called the American Leadership Forum, which was an organization for community leadership in Silicon Valley. And I went with them up to Sacramento, and they were talking about the presidential election in 2008. So this was in the spring of 2006. And they talked about Hillary Clinton as being a candidate potentially. So I said, you know what, I really would like to help her become president of the United States. So I took the skills that I had developed from I didn't mention that I moved from technology into sales and built most of my career in sales. So I took that experience and I became a big fundraiser for her. And I became like her largest fundraiser in Northern California. And I got to broaden my network across the whole of Silicon Valley, got to know Hillary well. And even though she didn't get the nomination, she did become Secretary of State. So I began to understand that, maybe I could go help her, and that this is something you could do if you were involved with political candidates. So I ended up working for her at the State Department. So, I never thought that I would do that. I did not have the intent when I started helping Hillary. I wanted to see a woman president of the United States. I didn't necessarily think about working in government, but the opportunity presented itself. So I took advantage of it. I came here and worked in the government for 4 years, which was a wonderful, wonderful experience and a broadening experience. But when I was there, I also brought with me a passion about women. I worked with the secretary to form the Women's Business Council, and then I developed entrepreneurship programs that were focused on women. So, I had a real opportunity to continue my passions. And then afterwards, the moving into the nonprofit sector, I was actually sort of doing a number of different things, working for the New York Academy of Sciences and helping Hillary run on her next run for president. But we built the STEM pipeline, and that was a passion of mine because, of course, I was involved in women's in STEM careers. So, what I would say is that the consistency across this is I've been able to bring skills that I built over a lifetime. Majoring on my superpowers, like technology and fundraising. And that was also why I ended up being able to be effective at Catalyst, because I was able to take these transferable skills and move from sector to sector, focusing on what I was really passionate about.
It's interesting. I hear you sort of like you're passionate, be present, and don't be afraid to leap. Right. So sort of be able to recognize if you know what your passions are, then you can recognize them in the present and then have the confidence to leap. And I want to thank you for all your work in STEM. My daughter's a computing engineering major, so you've made an impression generations down.
Well, really good for her. I also, want to point out some of the times I made these changes were because, things were not working so well on the path I was in, but it gave me an opportunity to reflect on who I was, what was I passionate about, what do I really bring to the party, what are my strengths, so that I took that into the next job. So sometimes, you have the most opportunities when you have breaks in your career, and you have an opportunity to reflect and understand.
Well, so you're so passionate, person passionate about women, and I'm wondering, why is that so important to you? I mean, what about promoting women over the course of your career? What made that such a sort of personal passion for you? Was there an event? Was there a moment that created that for you? Or has it just been sort of as you've moved through time and seen things in your career that it became a passion over time?
I actually think it became a passion over time. It was my lived experience working in Silicon Valley, being a part of the women's networks, having an opportunity to be sponsored by other people and then wanting to mentor them, seeing how important that was to my own personal advancement. And then, wanting to make sure that women have impact and power in society. I mean, that's what motivated me with Hillary to do that, and that's what motivates me, at Catalyst, that every woman has equal opportunity to reach their full potential, and that we see women in power who can make a difference in the type of society we have with more equity, more inclusiveness. So, early in my career, I was focused on the computer industry. Then I was focused, quite frankly, on raising a family and also having my career. But as I've started to have my lived experience and had more flexibility in the range of things I could do, I started to really develop these passions.
Well, as you look out here and you see these women who are, at the beginning of building their career in that line, is there anything that a piece of advice that you would give them along those lines as they start to walk out to and build their careers? I think about Natalia right here.
Well, I have a lot. I have lots learned along the way. So one thing that I think about is think in decades, not in years, because you know if we're lucky enough to be where Edie and Judith and I are right now, you're going to have a long career, and you're going to sit at my age and say, I still have energy to do more. Uh, and you're going to want to do more. So, the fact that at 33 you're going to have a 2-year-old and your job and you're going to be balancing all these things, you have opportunities across your lifetime to give back in different ways. So, I do think that one of the joys in life is to continue to have passions that motivate you, that excite you on an everyday basis. And if you think in terms of decades, not in terms of years, that makes a big difference. Another thing I would say is, and I've alluded to this, is to align your passions and your strengths and what you're naturally good at in terms of what you really focus on. And that's what I've come to know. I mean, when I went into Catalyst, Catalyst is such a great fit because, I had passion that I had developed over a lifetime, and they needed a disruptive person who understood technology and was a good fundraiser and understood enterprises, and it just all aligned together. And those strengths developed over time. But it was when I took the job, everyone said to me, "Oh, this is the perfect job. This is exactly it." And so I was really able to be in the zone around that job. So if you focus on what you're excited about and you understand it and develop your major with your majors, as I like to say, I think that's key to being successful.
Well, I'd like to turn to Catalyst for a second. And, it's interesting to be able to learn more about it. And so, for those of you who may not know about Catalyst, right? I mean, Catalyst was founded, as Edie said, 60 years ago on this notion of, well, greater leadership by women in business might be a really smart idea. Right? And so, if we think about that great idea was started, eons ago, but we had an organization that started 60 years ago. I was wondering if you could speak to how the organization under your leadership is thinking about how you address the challenges women today face in the workplace.
Well, it's a very great time to be thinking about this. It was famously said that sometimes change doesn't happen for decades, and sometimes decades happen in weeks. And we're in a time of very rapid change. So, as Catalyst is celebrating our 60th anniversary, our theme is the Great Reimagining. Equity for women, equity for all. So, our challenge today is, how do we get to true equity? How do we contribute on that path to real equity? And, Natalia, you mentioned it. We're focused on how do we really move to equity? I mean, and that's a challenge of this country for centuries. But I think we're in a time where the nature of work is really changing, and we have an opportunity to really reimagine that future with all this change that is happening and been turbocharged by the pandemic. So we look at reimagining the workplace, and we know that the great experiment we're doing around flexible work is changing what life is all about on a daily basis for us. We know that the pandemic has shown the infrastructure issues we have around childcare, and that we need to address. In fact, I was just at a dinner on Tuesday night with the Secretary of Commerce, and she was saying, well, the child care and the parental leave are the things that got left on the floor with that latest bill that we had. And we have got to explain, help understand that these are economic issues. These are not just social issues. But we need to reimagine what leadership is all about. And we just had a discussion about it at Edie's seminar, that the type of leadership that's needed needs to be more empathetic, more inclusive, more adaptable. And, I think that some of these feminine traits like empathy are the things that the nature of and what we think of as a leader is changing and evolving, and an opportunity for all of us to really drive to what that is. So, I think that Catalyst is focused on equity for everyone. In fact, we have a new initiative around frontline workers, which really has come to light in the pandemic, because the women who lost their jobs in the pandemic in the C-session were the women in retail and healthcare, in services on the front line. And we need to make sure that they can come back into the workplace, that they can participate fully in the workplace, and and that they can thrive. So Catalyst is moving from starting out with helping educated women get part-time jobs when jobs were completely gendered in 1962 and there were no career jobs in business, to helping every woman thrive in the workplace.
Well, and what I love is you're reimagining accountability as well
Yes.
as an accountant. And I think, one of the things that's really interesting in your four-prong approach is this notion of we've really got to understand our metrics, and how we talk about this. I think that was probably a lot in the sustainability sessions, is what does it mean to advance leadership? And it's just so important to think about the accountability and how we measure that. So,
Well, we've given that a lot of thought. In fact, we just redid a new strategic plan, and the impact statement we have is that women thrive in inclusive workplace free of biases and barriers, as represented by equal pay and representation at all levels. So really measuring those. As an accountant, I will say that that's non-trivial.
yeah, I would agree. It's very material.
No. So, when you think about actually getting people to report diversity, to actually make it transparent, to be able to deal with all the pay issues, so that's a challenge for our next 10 years.
Well, we'll look this way,
Mhm.
right? To our future leaders. So we've done the past, we've done the present. I'd like to move to the future. Okay. So as you think about the future and women in business, I'm going to start with what's your biggest concern as you look to the horizon. And then I'd ask you to think about we've got a wonderful group of people in this room who would like to make sure that concern never never occurs, or we can minimize the impact as much as possible. I feel like you're the expert with the vision. I'm curious what you see on our horizons that we should be aware of.
Well, I already talked about the vision of equity for everyone. And, we know that we still have a long way to go. In fact, we talked yesterday at this conference that we are still only at 8.8% of women CEOs in the Fortune 500. Now, that's up from 20 years ago of 7, but it's still nowhere near what it needs to be and what it should be. But what we need to do is to, first of all, make sure that women, and especially women of color, because there's only 5 women CEOs out of the 44 that are women of color, and they represent 40% of the US population. So there is a long way to go there, that we really work with intentionality to give women opportunities to do the types of jobs that they need to do to be able to be in a position to hold those positions of power. And that needs to be done with intentionality. So sponsorship, hiring practices, promotion practices. We at Catalyst, when Catalyst started, we focused, how do we fix the women, so to speak? And then we moved to how do we fix the environment that we're in? How do we get rid of the unconscious biases? We have a program called Mark, Men Advocating Real Change, which is focused on helping men understand their privilege and how they can become advocates for women in the workplace and on an everyday basis, whether it's interrupting sexism and representing unconscious bias on the day-to-day interactions in meetings or in performance reviews or selecting what jobs, if there's a job to go oversee, not just assume that because a woman has 2 children that they're not going to want to take that job. So, I think for all of you, there's an opportunity every day in everything you do to help the women who are peers of yours, the people you manage, and also to help the men who, I think most of these men, many of the men really want to be advocates, but they may not even understand what they're doing that's making it difficult. So that we can speak up about this and within your companies, help them drive this change. And I was speaking to a couple of you that you're working in your companies, you're working on the ERGs, you're part of the change here, and you're getting your companies to drive to this. And I was we were listening to that panel yesterday, and Penny Pennington said, the war for talent is happening, and the talent won. And there's a labor shortage going on right now, and there's more power than ever before that companies are trying to understand what they can do to attract and retain and promote women, because women are graduating at a higher rate out of college than men are, and that talent is there, and they need that talent. So this is the time to step up and to know your power in the equation here, because you are powerful.
Well, I love it because I asked about concern and you flipped it around and you made it positive, which was awesome. Right. So, if I think about it, what you left me with at the very end is sort of, this is our time. Right. This is our time.
This is our time. There hasn't been a better time. And, I'll end with, Abraham Lincoln famously said, the best way to predict the future is to make it.
Thank you. Thank you all.